As the 20th century neared its midpoint, China was a nation in turmoil. Decades of internal strife, foreign invasions, and political instability had left the country fractured. In this chaos, a revolutionary leader emerged, Mao Zedong. Born in 1893 in Hunan, Mao was once a librarian at Peking University, where he embraced Marxist ideology. As China descended into civil war between the nationalists, Kuomintang, and the communists, Mao's strategic genius led the Red Army through the legendary Long March, 1934–1935, securing his leadership within the Communist Party. World War II saw China battling the invading Japanese forces, but when Japan surrendered in 1945, the Civil War resumed. With peasant support and superior guerrilla tactics, Mao's communist forces overpowered the nationalists, forcing Chiang Kai-shek to flee to Taiwan. On October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong stood atop Tiananmen Gate in Beijing and proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China, PRC. It was a turning point in history. China was now under communist rule. Mao promised to reshape the nation, aiming to eliminate feudalism, imperialism, and capitalism. However, with absolute power in his hands, his radical reforms would soon test the resilience of the Chinese people. The Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution loomed on the horizon, threatening to shake the very foundation of China's society. With the People's Republic of China firmly under his control, Mao Zedong sought to transform the country into a self-sufficient socialist state. By the late 1950s, he launched an ambitious plan known as the Great Leap Forward, 1958–1962. His vision was to rapidly industrialize China, surpassing Western powers in agricultural and steel production. Across the countryside, villages were reorganized into communes, where people lived collectively, dressed in simple Mao suit-collared tunics and matching trousers, a symbol of socialist unity. Traditional family life was dismantled, and private farming was abolished. Farmers were instructed to abandon traditional methods, melting their iron tools to produce backyard steel, most of which was unusable. Propaganda posters depicted workers and peasants smiling as they toiled in the fields and factories, but the reality was grim. Overzealous production quotas led to falsified reports, hiding the truth. Crops failed, and food supplies dwindled. By the early 1960s, mass starvation had gripped China, leading to the deaths of an estimated 30 million people. As famine ravaged the nation, Mao's prestige suffered. Some communist leaders, including Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, began questioning his policies, advocating for economic reforms. But Mao was not ready to relinquish power. By the mid-1960s, he would strike back with a movement designed to purge his enemies and reinforce his revolutionary ideology, the Cultural Revolution. By the mid-1960s, Mao Zedong's grip on power had weakened. The failures of the Great Leap Forward had led to widespread famine, and his political rivals, including Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, had begun steering China toward economic recovery. Fearing he was losing influence, Mao launched a new campaign in 1966, the Cultural Revolution, to purge his enemies and rekindle revolutionary fervor. China descended into chaos. Students and young revolutionaries, dressed in military-style Red Guard uniforms with Mao badges pinned to their jackets, roamed the streets, attacking intellectuals, party officials, and anyone accused of being counter-revolutionary. Ancient temples, books, and historical artifacts were destroyed, as Mao sought to erase China's past and build a new, purely socialist society. Liu Shaoqi was imprisoned and left to die in miserable conditions, while Deng Xiaoping was exiled. Schools and universities shut down as millions of students joined Mao's Red Guards, chanting from the Little Red Book, a collection of Mao's quotes that became a symbol of loyalty. The chaos spread to the government and military, leading to infighting and economic stagnation. By the early 1970s, Mao's health declined, and with the country in disarray, Premier Zhou Enlai sought to restore order. In 1972, Mao surprised the world by welcoming U.S. President Richard Nixon to Beijing, signaling the start of China's re-engagement with the West. However, behind the scenes, a power struggle was brewing over who would succeed Mao. On September 9, 1976, Mao Zedong died at the age of 82, marking the end of an era. Dressed in his iconic gray Mao suit, his body was embalmed and placed in a grand mausoleum in Tiananmen Square. Soon after, the Cultural Revolution ended, and Deng Xiaoping emerged as China's new leader, beginning a wave of economic reforms that would reshape the nation. Mao's legacy remains controversial to some. He was the father of modern China. To others, a ruthless dictator whose radical policies caused untold suffering. But one thing is certain: his rule from 1949 to 1976 forever changed the course of Chinese history. With Mao Zedong's death on September 9, 1976, China stood at a crossroads. The Cultural Revolution had left the country in chaos, its economy in ruins, education system shattered, and millions of families torn apart. As Mao's embalmed body lay in the Grand Mausoleum in Tiananmen Square, the struggle for power erupted among his successors. Initially, Mao's close ally, Hua Guofeng, took control. Dressed in a Mao suit, just like the late chairman, Hua tried to maintain Mao's radical policies. However, his rule was short-lived. In 1978, Deng Xiaoping returned from political exile, gaining support from key Communist Party figures. Unlike Mao, Deng prioritized practical reforms over ideology. He famously declared, "It doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice," signaling a shift towards economic modernization. Under Deng's leadership, China abandoned Mao's disastrous economic policies. The Mao suit, once a mandatory symbol of socialist unity, slowly gave way to more Western-style clothing, reflecting the country's growing openness to the world. The government introduced market reforms, allowing private businesses, foreign investment, and agricultural liberalization. Special economic zones, SEZs, like Shenzhen transformed into booming industrial hubs, laying the foundation for China's rise as a global economic power. Despite these reforms, Mao's influence lingered. His image remained on posters, statues, and China's currency, and his supporters, known as the Maoists, resisted Deng's capitalist-friendly policies. By the late 1980s, tensions between reformists and hardline communists reached a breaking point, culminating in the tragic events of the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989, a moment that defined the limits of China's new direction. Mao Zedong had shaped modern China through revolution, war, and ideology, but it was under Deng Xiaoping that the nation stepped into the global stage, paving the way for the economic powerhouse it would become in the 21st century. Though Mao's era ended in 1976, his impact on China and the world would never be erased.